And there we are. Okay, awesome. Okay, so it's just Alexi and me for now. Hopefully some more people will join. Welcome to a new Hangout. And I'll just start sharing my screen. And let's see. There we are. I'll just share like that. Yes, I have some slides as always. So I thought I would talk shortly about forms, which has been put into a new package. Just shortly show the API. And then there's been some changes to the website. Thought we could just talk shortly about that. And Webpackbin has got quite a few iterations and is actually ready for release. And then we have this new awesome pull request, which I hope we can merge after or tonight at least. And maybe we'll be ready for beta soon. And then there's just a note about operators on the other packages, which has also been changed. And there's some exciting talk about server and stuff, if people are interested in talking about that. I haven't gotten my head too much into that yet. But I thought that I'll just mention a few things around that. And yeah, and then we have a new update to be released. So that's awesome. Cool. So let me just start with the forms refactor. But I'll just write some semi-pseudo code here. Let's see. OK, so first thing with forms is that it's now new package. So it's called Cerebral Provider Forms. Oops, it's form, but forms provider. And basically you add this to your controller as you would do with any other provider. Provider is like this, forms provider. And you can give it some options like I think it's rules. So you can add additional rules there, like is awesome. And then you get like, oh, I don't remember exact API, but it's, I guess it's the value, you get the form, and you will get any argument that was used with the rule. And what you do is like return value, awesome, something like that. So the point is that it was difficult to add rules in the previous version, and now it's super simple. And also inside an action, my action, you have access to forms. So you can say forms, update rules. So you can dynamically add rules within an action. And we also have global error messages. So you can say error messages like this. And for example, maybe you want to add a global error message for minimum length. So it's, oh, this is wrong syntax. Like this, and you would get, oh, I don't remember the API exactly or the signature, but something like you get the value and you get the argument you pass to min length. So you can say something like you have to pass or something like value is too short. It has to be, and then arg, which is like the length, stuff like that. I won't go too much into it, but it has some more oomph to it. The cool thing now is that when you define a form inside your state tree, you just define like it's a structure. So typically name, value, like previously you had to put it inside this form factory, but you don't have to do that anymore. You just point to the state path, and it will identify any property object with a value as a field, just automatically. So you can do nesting here, like address, like street, blah, blah, blah. Oops. And it will just automatically understand that because address doesn't have a value, but street has a value. It also understands arrays. So you can have like users name value like this. You can do all sorts of things, and it just understands it. The point is that, just make sure I'm still on here. Yeah. The point is that when you use this, you connect your form using this form factory, or basically it's a computed. So you would say, for example, form state app.form, something like that. And then you have your components, which receives the form. And what this computed does is actually go through the whole form and validates it and does all the cool stuff, which makes it possible for you to do everything from form is valid to form.name.isValid. You have things like form.name.failed rule. So if it's not valid, you can say failed rule.name, which would be, for example, min length. And then you could say failed rule arg, and that will be 3, for example. Stuff like that. Yeah. So the point is that it actually, the validation is derived instead of being updated inside the state tree. And you can do things like form my super form, for example. So you could kind of like make your own computed to populate the form, and then it goes into the actual form computed, which adds the validation stuff. So you can do crazy things with this. It gives a lot of possibilities. So, and now we're doing it right. Like, validation should be like derived from the state. It should not be inserted into the state. And we have found some issues doing it that way. The bad thing, well, not bad, but the backside of it is that you can't look inside the state tree and see if stuff is valid or not. But this is more correct. And it will be exciting to see what people use it for, especially since it's a computed. Cool. I guess I think both of you have been part of the. Oh, I just stopped the sharing. I think both of you have been part of some of the discussions here. I don't know if you have any questions. Please stop me. But I think that's yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a good point. I've never thought of that. It's always been like forms, but yeah, you could validate anything really. And there was also a suggestion. Yeah, let's at least discuss it. Like, what are the other options for? What kind of other validation options are there? So maybe it should just be a validation thing, like Cerebral validate or something. That's a good point. There was also some talk about using JSON schema, which is a cool idea because it's a standard, but it's just a bit too much to take in. And at least for the consumer of the one thing is for the implementer to get your head and around it and figure out how to integrate it with form validation. But also for the consumer, like, do they have to understand JSON schema to actually just validate their forms? So yeah, I didn't go into that now, but it will be possible to refactor the project and make that like a transparent thing, or whatever you would call it. Yeah. So that's the state of the project now. I was also thinking about having like a field computed, so you didn't always have to point to a form, but you can use field instead. So typically you would connect a field to a component instead of the whole form, which if you have a large form, you would probably not have everything inside one component. So that's an easy thing to add. And there's also optimizations possibilities there that I haven't explored, but I know they're there. So yeah, this project can be iterated a lot, I think. But at least now we have moved to this derived validation, which is great, I think. Cool. I'll just note what the comments here. Okay. Form validation. Really validate anything. Now, what's kind of cool is like when you have state tree based validation, you don't even need, like, it doesn't matter what you have as a UI. You could validate canvas and like anything. So that's kind of cool. I'll call it Cerebral provider validation. Cool. Oh, is it Brian? Hello. Hello there.
Lunchtime fun time.
Yeah. I'm actually having I'm having my first night alone for a few months. So I bought a 6-pack of beer and I bought frozen pizza, some chocolate.
Reminiscing about your former life.
Yeah, and I also bought a game, PlayStation game.
Where in one night, Daddy Christian degenerates into pre-child mode.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So if you guys want to hang out all night, I'm here, no problem. Okay, what was my next point here? Yeah, so let's see. Let me share my screen again. Are we here? Yes. So, oops, what's happening? Cool. Okay, so yeah, we did some big changes to the website, which has been welcome, I think. Like there were documentation all over the place, the same concepts explained multiple times and all this stuff, but now it's like straight to it. Like this is how we install. Here is a hello world example. You see the code straight away. More like teasers on the debugger. Like there's a pull request with some images here. Also going straight to like what is this being used for, like demos, and I thought maybe we could have some more examples, some short examples, so you see what it's all about. Like this is what people usually look for, like some code examples. And then all the documentation is the developer guide. Like there's only one documentation for state, and it's combined with the tutorial. So you first get an explanation about state, and then you can load the tutorial to do some coding. And all the tutorials are loaded in Webpackbin, which is actually super awesome. So you can just, I don't know, I think this link is broken currently. Oh yeah, let me see if I do this. You just open it up, and then you get the code straight away, and you can play around with it. And what I think is especially cool is that as you go through these concepts on the final tutorial chapter, you are actually told to download the project from Webpackbin. So all you have to do is click the download button and do npm install and npm start, and you have your project ready to move on. So it's such a smooth transition from the tutorial to actually start making something locally on your machine. But you don't have to start setting up everything, like install this and install that. When you want to look into what Cerebral is about, you use Webpackbin, so there's no installation. So that's awesome. Yes. So also decided to put back documentation on at least the core packages on the website, so there's one place to find everything. They have the same structure, and they are very API focused. So you see all the method names and the factories or operators that you can use. So that's really nice. And then we have the API, which is now more like API focused. So there are focused on like the events and the methods and stuff like that, instead of being just lots of talk about the concepts and stuff. So yeah, things are a lot smoother now. But I think it needs some more iteration, and there will be an update with the merge of some new stuff, hopefully later tonight. But yeah, and it's been great to have help like going through the docs and fixing text, and especially looking through the tutorials. That's been super awesome. So looking forward to get it like ready for release, which is really like, I think we found the structure and everything now. So that's super awesome. Cool. I don't know if anyone has any comments related to the website, anything that feel is like missing before we do any release. I see the chat.
Awesome work.
Sweet. Cool. Yes. And then what's the next one? Yeah. And then it's, yeah, I can just talk about it. It's a Webpackbin. I plan to release it on Sunday. There hasn't been that much testing, but like it's working. And sometimes you just have to get it into production to get that essential feedback before you actually should deploy it to production.
Why test when you can have your users test it for you?
Yeah, exactly. But the transition should be pretty smooth, as you saw. Skru av knappen bak. Sorry. Yeah, as you saw when I clicked the link here, if you're using like an old URL, you get, oh, you don't see this. Let's see. Let me quickly share. You get this mission message that tells you that you're probably using an old Webpackbin link. Tell the author that there's a new Webpackbin to update your bin, blah, blah, blah. And then the old Webpackbin will run for a month or something. So the transition should be pretty smooth. And it's just laziness. I could probably figure out how to move the existing bins, but everything's changed, like the whole architecture, the database, the actual structure of the bins and everything. So yeah, hopefully it will be okay. But pretty excited about this one because it's a really, really good reference project for Cerebral. And it's really cool that it's actually released just around the release of Cerebral 2. That's really cool.
Yeah, I thought that was a very clever marketing plan. I was like, hey, how to get into the minds of the developers with a new thing?
Yeah.
That's really cool, really. Like.
Yeah, and thanks for actually thinking that this was a plan. This was a coincidence.
Yeah, it's a plan from somewhere in your mind. You don't know. No, it's really like you had this feeling that these things can come together. And yeah, cool, really.
Yeah.
And for training, it will be awesome. Like what you did with the tutorial, it's really the way to go. I've been to workshops and people spend so much time installing stuff. You can just start there. It's really cool. Really well done.
I also gotten some feedback by people who actually use the old Webpackbin for teaching, and I gave them some really good, like, they actually use it, and that's so fun to hear. And that's the plan, like with Webpackbin going forward, is making it a better and better teaching tool, not just for live teaching, but also have some crazy plans for actually recording courses, which is going to be exciting.
On Webpackbin, so that the tutorial runs on the, like.
Yeah, so basically, like the plan is that instead of creating a new bin, you create a new course. So a course is a set of bins. Mm-hmm. And basically, the only thing you need to do, it's a different kind of, like on Egghead, there are really well-produced videos. So it will be quite a bit different format, but similar, because you can just start a new course and you can click the record button, and then you record your voice and you can just start coding. And then each bin is like maybe 4 or 5 minutes long. And when you're done, you just click the stop button and you click publish when you're ready, and then it's out. So because it takes insane amounts of time creating these videos, just going through them. So what I think is nice is when you kind of like wing it. So you have some plan to teach something, but if you do something wrong or you say something wrong and suddenly you stop a little bit, it's not such a big deal. I think it's more important that more people get access to actually producing courses. So you don't have to be like a JavaScript superstar to create a course. If you've created a small tool, you can go to Webpackbin, create a small course for it, and yeah, just publish it.
Yeah, it's a cool idea. I see a lot of tutorials on the audio industry, like mixing skills and stuff like that, where they have gaming tools to record video, like there's tools that you can record any game around. So it's not code, it's just playing games. And they use these tools to record what you do on screen. But as it's not text, it makes sense. But in your case, it will be like the equivalent, like, hey, look, I'll show you how to do this or that. It's really nice.
And the cool thing about this is like you can just click the pause button and then you can continue on the code that you're looking at.
Yeah.
So you can play around with it at any point during the video. And when you hit the play button again, it just resets the state in the course and then just continues from there, which is also it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it could be like you could maybe insert stop points, like now try to code this part.
Yeah.
And then you try to do it and it runs or not, and then it continues. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if this.
Yeah. No, sorry.
Well, I was just saying, like, I'm not sure where the link is now, but yeah, I had a video about, I had a small startup where we actually built exactly what you're saying, even with the video. So you had like a video and was like pointing to different parts of the app. Like, this is where you get your assignment, this is where you code and stuff like that. Okay, I just have to fix one small thing and I'll be back. So, Brian, entertain.
Greetings from the United States of America, the land of the used to be free and the home of the cowardly. That's all I have to say.
We're like lost children without Christians. Cerebral.
We should get Garth going about Cerebral server.
Yeah, or Wayne about GraphQL.
GraphQL, yeah.
Sorry, I've been in the middle of a music lesson. My daughter's having a music lesson, so I had the microphone off, but she's just finished.
Okay.
Hi, Daddy. What are you doing? Who's that?
Hello.
Strangers.
Strangers, yeah.
What instrument do you play?
She plays flute.
Flute.
She has a Skype lesson once a week with her auntie in Washington, USA, Washington State. Cerebral server. Yeah, I think that's not going to happen. People are not very interested in it, and it's not that people are not interested in it. It's that everyone has a different idea about how it should be and how it should communicate with the client, or if it should communicate at all. I think the way to go instead will be to think more about how we can make the function tree a bit more accessible. That seems to be the consensus anyway.
So what was the problem with the, like the example code that you paste, like binding it to the Express instance and then having those methods? Seemed good to me.
I don't know if there was a problem exactly. It was just that some people don't want to use WebSockets. Maybe they want to use something else. Yeah, they don't want the framework to be restrictive. It should be just something that you can use as a component within your backend system, but not your backend system.
Could you make the transport part generic? Would that be a lot of work? Like you could do server sent events or WebSockets, make that pluggable. But the API as a whole seem really good. You bind it, and then you just have the sort of Cerebral level methods for talking to the client, or vice versa. That could be agnostic to the transport.
I've forgotten his name now. One of the other guys on chat was basically suggesting that we use another RPC-based protocol, like more of a standards-based protocol for that, rather than making our own, which isn't necessarily a bad idea. It was something I hadn't used before, so I don't know. We'll see what happens. I guess concentrate on getting Cerebral core stuff out and ready before we start thinking about stuff like that.
That was one thing that I thought that was cool about it, though, is that, you know, the juice that Cerebral brings in is the signal idea, and using the signal as the way to communicate is sort of what made it unique, I thought. So, oh, sorry.
Yeah, I agree. I think the thing I like about Cerebral is that things like routing just go away, and the same thing on the server. You know, you still have to deal with routing if you use a REST-based API. But on the other hand, a REST-based API is also a public API, and if you wrap it in Cerebral, or if you wrap your server in a kind of custom interface that's custom to Cerebral, then you kind of block out all other users, and you'd still need to implement some API-based endpoint for non-Cerebral clients, maybe. So it all gets a bit more, I don't know. There's a lot of, I guess, different ways in which you could do it, and to kind of suggest via our library that this is the way it should be is maybe a bit too presumptuous.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of room for experimentation here. And I'm just really happy, like, it's so nice to have this like reiteration, which Cerebral 2 really is, of Cerebral 1. And now, like, okay, now we feel that we at least nailed a big part of what Cerebral should be on the client. And then now, when this gets released, focus on, okay, what can we do with this on the server? That's it's going to be a fresh, yeah, it's going to be really nice. Tiago, did you want to comment on something? That's, by the way, his name. His name is Tiago.
I don't think I should be getting onto that matter right now, because it will be kind of lengthy, and will probably get in the way. So maybe let me finish the boilerplate I have that is using function tree absolutely everywhere, including for session management and all of that. And we can discuss it from there, because those are basically my options, and it should work.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's always good to have like a very concrete example to discuss around. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe that could be a good kickoff, like when we get Cerebral 2 out, and then now let's shift focus, and then start with some code.
I think the only thing that would really make this, the transition easier would be the targeting, the generic targeting tag or operator thing.
Yeah, like we work on function tree on the server, and one thing there are two things I'm missing. Like, one thing is a node thing, and that's destructuring arguments. Like in Node 6, you can't do that. Yeah, I think you can in Node 7.
I'm using that for validation as well.
Yeah.
If it shows, then I'm sure the props are wrong.
Yeah. and then it's like the operators. Yeah, you don't really have like these generic nice operators. So it would be nice to find some way we can make that more consistent. And like if we do something really, really good on server side, we might want to sync that with the client. So maybe there will be like a Cerebral 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever related to changes on the server, just to make things more consistent. So, but it's nice to look at it from a server perspective. Mm-hmm.
There was one thing I was thinking of, kind of thinking about Cerebral 3. The tags have been extremely useful. And if you think about treating your server as an extension of your state tree, one thing to think about with tags might be the possibility to do asynchronous tags. So something which would basically not necessarily halt execution, but give you some kind of deferred resolution so that you can have a temporary value and then a value that arrives later.
That's exactly it.
Both server side and client side gives you the option to think about how you would communicate with something that's actually not local, but still treat it as like the most basic.
Yeah, so instead of having like success
this hangout is about to get lit.
Yeah. So instead of like you do just a set, and then instead of saying props or whatever, you would say from server, and then you just set it. And then it understands that this is async, and you just remove all the success error stuff. And yeah.
Yeah, and it would be a little bit like a computed with kind of cached properties and all kinds of stuff so that you could not have to kind of redo that every operation every time. Yeah, you'd have to be able to control it somehow, but I think that there's some interesting things that could be done in that area. Maybe it even would fit into the current Cerebral 2, just a custom tag that will resolve temporarily to some kind of loading value, and then later on resolve to something real. I mean, that would probably work today, actually.
Yeah, that's a good point. Did you have input there, Tiago?
So that wasn't exactly what I was thinking, but honestly, let me finish the boilerplate, and I'll show you. I'll show you all what I'm thinking. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, let's leave it at that for now.
You're like restraining yourself.
I am.
Let's see. I can. Yeah. Let's see. Okay, I had that server stuff on the list. We can go back to that if we want to.
Okay.
I just want to get.
I had just had one idea I had was along those lines, maybe some exploration around like a sort of default error path handling, either at function tree or Cerebral, because a lot of times I notice that I have to use paths over and over again just for the case of, is everything okay, or was there some kind of error? And many times, like, sometimes the error is not recoverable even, or whatever. It's just like console.log or something, and it would really clean up, signals and paths a lot if like Cerebral could say, you could just define in the default case just console.log at the high level, and they would kind of bubble up.
Yeah.
I guess if you're doing your branching using promise-based syntax, then I guess you could also use catch from a promise-based syntax and treat it the same way, wrap everything and end it with a catch.
Because that was like never explored, because on client side, you really want to inform the user, like where did it go wrong? But like when you do something on the server, you kind of like, you want to do all this stuff, and if it doesn't work, then you just want to bubble up and okay, it's wrong. So I think that really needs to be like, I was talking to Alexi here, and we were comparing to like promises, like a pure promise and observables, and then function tree, and how do they differ, and where do you use them, and all this stuff. And then like function tree doesn't have bubbling. You have to be very explicit, and I think that it's definitely something to explore.
Even on the client too, like we have like a mounted signal which fetches in parallel a bunch of data that you need to render your first component. And it's like the fact that you have explicit error handling for the user, and then explicit handling for their messages, and explicit handling for their likes or posts. Like at that case, like it doesn't really matter. Like all the user needs to know is there was a problem fetching data. So like each one of those things that I'm fetching, you're handling, and I have this semi-custom error message, which is just like post error or likes error. But it would be totally sufficient just to have one error path at the top of the signal that just said error fetching data, and I could delete like half of the code in the signal.
And this is the interesting part. Like, that's the next point there with the new sequence and parallel stuff. It's like that gives us the API to actually define this, because it's very hard to express something at the top level when you just have this array. Like when we talked about naming like a sequence, and and especially this error handling, it would be possible to, okay, if you want to catch stuff like errors at the top, okay, define explicitly a sequence, and then the second argument is the error catching function thingy, for example.
I think this idea is really cool, but it should not be error focused. I think it's a bit like the go-to thing we're discussing now. We have to think it right, but it's obvious that you have a lot of repetitions sometimes where you always put the same thing that goes nested inside, inside, and inside. And if you could say like bubble up when I say this path, like the path inherits something, like for example, you define a path at the top level, and then you can reuse it wherever you want below. Then you can pass more than just errors, or you can pass errors with context. And I think it's better than the like one thing error bubbling up, because then you can say like there's all this nesting, but it's like transforming this code to the async thing we have in JavaScript, where things start to get more horizontal, even though it is nested, but then it looks more horizontal because things depend on each other, but like where you end up is like always the same place or things like this. So it's like,
like typically you would have sequence here, and instead of having like a function that catches errors like this, you could have like an object instead, which are like fallback paths or global paths. So you can say foo, do this, bar, do this. So wherever you are in this sequence, you could do like return path to, for example. So you, just an idea I had when you said that.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly it. It's just a kind of go-to that's global for a sequence.
Yeah.
So I would put it like, well, like you did, inside the sequence. Exactly. Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
So the thing is like, so like we have like with the debugger we have like every time something looks good as an API, we also have to think about, okay, how do we visualize this? So that's like the second thing that needs to be solved, but that's kind of secondary. The important thing is to have something useful, and then but sometimes that can be a good thing. Like if you can't visualize it, then it's probably mentally very hard to reason about it. So it's a good check, like if, okay, this is a super cool API, lets me do great stuff, but if we can't visualize it, you can't build a mental image of it either. So it's a good check.
Yes, and it should be somehow clear that there was a jump, because then you know where to look. I mean, maybe you can show it inside, but like when you see the actions, like the default thing has been triggered, because then it can get confusing if you think, hey, I have no error path here. Why? But I think, but I think if this thing is like moved to the top level to start with, like for just a signal, you have one catch path thing, could work. If you can move it inside each sequence, well, it's even better, but could be a second step for me. It's really for now, it's really that the default exit path that are usually two things, and you want to share them. Cool. Discussing go-to in code is always a very big issue. I hope we don't get stuck in go-to space.
I think Tiago had a
I was just reading it. What aren't those all? So maybe that's second of the max to independent catch type, which should probably be global.
Because I mean, like that kind of scenario is when you have like some kind of user error, right? And you just want to display the generic message to the user. So you could probably catch all of those errors, independently from the sequences. So that's why I'm thinking that maybe that object doesn't belong in there. It belongs like in a generic error catcher for your application.
That's a good point.
If you want separate exit paths, then those are probably errors, and errors should probably be handled, globally, so you can have your custom errors all in one place and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
No,
just,
I don't agree, because a good user experience involves a specific error treatment for many cases. Sometimes the error is just blunt. It breaks everything, and okay, then it breaks. But often you have something that could help, and it really depends on the error. So I think either we pass a lot of context into the error, or we put some kind of error resolution in context. And I personally favor going with the code where it happens, instead of having, you know, all the cases in a single error handling thing that's at the top of an app.
but those in my point of view, those global errors, let's call them that, they would be structured according to what you want to do with them. It doesn't mean that the arguments have to be, you know, so for instance, you have an error that shows a specific type of message, or like with a pop-up or whatever, and you pass arguments to that kind of error every time you want to show a pop-up, and just throw that kind of error that you know it's going to, like a pop-up error, pop-up custom error class or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I think it's also like, it depends on the complexity of the sequence. Like if it's just you're just setting something, or you're doing one thing, and it's like the error is like a global error, or you might have a sequence that is really complex, and the error that happens is related to that specific sequence. So it's, yeah, I think you would just have to explore it. Like there are different scenarios and different needs, and people have different opinions about errors. Like I'm very explicit about, I want to tell the user exactly what went wrong at every step, while others like, okay, just like Brian said, something went wrong, refresh your browser or something like that.
But I mean,
Yeah.
don't we handle this already by using chains? I mean, because you can just create an exception handling chain, and you can reuse that if you want to.
Yeah, I guess it's just to avoid having to, like, say you do 5 requests, and you have to explicitly set the error chain every time. It will be nice to just set it at the top. And this is important. Like, is it because it's easier? Is it like there's this balance of, is it just to make it easier to write less syntax, or does it actually have?
I would normally create a chain factory which would accept something specific about the actual failure, and then handle it that way, because then you can customize it but not have to kind of rewrite everything every time.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we would need, I think the only thing we might be useful is kind of separate from the logic of an error, but actually a better way to handle unexpected errors.
Yeah.
I think this is maybe a little bit separate though than a kind of a logical flow error.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Like it's so easy to compose things in Cerebral. So like in your case, typically you would do request and then success and oh man and error. But if you kind of like, you just have a generic way to handle errors with requests, you would just do request and then the specific request, like request type A, and then you would rather just do success here. And that's all you do. And then the error will be automatically filled out by this factory. So that's also a way to handle this with the current way things work.
Yeah, but this pattern, like for me, if you could just do request and then you close the parenthesis and you have nothing, and the success is just what follows. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't, so it's like, yeah, not inside. It's not a factory. It's just an action.
Oh, okay.
And then
no, I prefer to do it the other way and to put the factory in the error so that you actually see the success and error exactly what's going to happen. So after success there, I would then explicitly write error, and then the error chain would then be passed every time. But then you can use a factory if you want a variant of that.
Do I have your example here, Garth?
Yeah. Yeah, the first example
Yeah, the first one.
But just where you have error, then just use a chain for that. I mean, then just reuse that wherever you want.
My generic error. Yeah.
See,
Yeah,
I'm
that-
so
that can
lazy
be-
that I want to eliminate the error path altogether. I don't even, and I
Yeah, but
just want to define one.
You want to see it. You want to see it, and you want to know how it's being handled.
I only want to see it if I care. So ideally, in my mind, ideally in my mind, when I'm trying to do as little work as possible, when I'm writing the signal, I just want one high, at the top level of the signal where it says error, where I can just say console.log, and then I just go along doing everything in that chain. And as I'm going along, and I say, hey, I want a better error for this somewhere deep down, like when I fetch likes, I really want to be like Christian and be a good developer and let the user know that it was the likes that failed to fetch. Then I can add that path when I care about it. But I don't have to repeat success error at every single level.
And this is like a really good example. Like for the next developer, like this one, there's no question about what happens when there's an error. Like it's very explicit. But here, you know that, okay, there are some hidden stuff here, but I can't see it. The good thing is like the debugger doesn't care. That's the benefit of the debugger. You can hide things without like completely hiding it from the next developer. But yeah, this is like very core to what is good code and bad code and readability and all this stuff.
Yeah, I'm just saying if we had as a part of the project, this idea that you can define an error path at the top level and it will be guaranteed to always be called if you want to respond there.
Yeah,
it seems like that wouldn't be confusing, and then you could just follow the success error any place where you want it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you put the just a chain and at the end you have this error, it's just not like hidden somewhere global, very far away. It's just at the end of the chain. I don't think we should put this very far away. But then you just syntax, because you just have action, 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 and it's supposed that this is what happens when everything's fine. And then you have this single error where things are handled, and then you can even put inside this error some cases and whatever. But when you read the code, you have some kind of flow that is easy because you have no indentation whatsoever. It's just that. And it's like for the developer, it's just, okay, this is if everything goes fine.
Yeah,
it's all handled there.
And I can see that point, and I remember that question, like when with the Cerebral, somebody said like callback hell. Like we do have like signal, like function tree definitions on our server side that has this do this success.
The pyramid of doom.
Yeah, it's more. Yeah, it's not like callback hell because there's no callbacks, but it's pyramid of doom, and it happens. And it would be nice to say do this, do that, then do this if everything okay. And then at the bottom you just have, okay, if one of these goes wrong, do this instead.
And it's not really like the pyramid doesn't, it's probably because of error handling for each of those steps, right, Christian? Like it's probably not because of your actual application flow, right?
Yeah, exactly. And and I see on server side, it would be, it's just different. Like there it's okay. Either it works, what the user requested, either it works. They don't care about each step on the server side. They just want to know if was I able to add this thing or remove this thing. And there might be many steps to that. So yeah, I just feel server is kind of different. Yeah.
And it's like here you're just writing error, but it could be login failed, it could be invalid password. I mean, it could be things that have a name. But then it's like, okay, we jump there if something happens that is not usual, that is unexpected. And so it's very simple to read what errors happen and where and how you deal with them. Because it's not inside error. When you read error, it's okay. What is the error? Oh, I don't know. here it's login failed or invalid password, and you can have lots of them, and it's just very simple to read.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just error. Okay, what error? No idea. Let's call it with a name. So yeah, I think it can really improve this Doom thing, readability.
Yeah, it's
We have to try.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
No, like, you don't have to use it. It's like if you feel it helps, you use it. Otherwise, you don't.
Yeah. And one thing I see now, which is really good with this discussion, is that there's one thing we need to fix in the current pull request of sequence and parallel, because now sequence is, well, we don't have to, but maybe we should. And that's now sequence works like this, do this, do that. So we should probably force an array there to just give the opportunity to pass multiple arguments. I don't know, we can still do it, of course, like if the next argument is an object, but
No.
I think that looks a bit weird. It just looks nicer with. Well, what do you think? Like, should we force an
That
array?
becomes an output path for do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good point. It doesn't work. So yeah, I think just to keep the options open, we should have an array there. Or at least if you, well, we can of course handle it. Like if we want this kind of API, then you have to use an array as the first argument. That will also be possible. But
maybe
okay,
it's a bad idea, but if the sequence starts with an object, like if we put the default path at the top, yeah, it's bad. No, it's a bad idea. Sorry. No, it would be terrible. But then, you know, it's like error handling is very important. Usually it's even more important than what actually goes into the sequence. And yeah, so if you read the code, you see the errors first.
Oh yeah, I like that. Yeah.
But yeah, so then you can.
When you define a signal, sequence, I assume, will be optional. Or will that be required now?
Sorry?
Will the sequence, as you're showing it there, be mandatory, or is this just optional?
With the current pull request, it's like doing sequence action is exactly the same as doing this. They are just plain, like the array literal is the simple version of sequence.
Okay, so if you don't need error handling, then just use the array.
Yes. Exactly. And also, yeah, what's also a little bit weird now, when I've been putting in this API on Webpackbin, is the naming, because you can name the sequence. So like here, like this looks correct, but like now with the current API, without forcing the array, it looks, yeah, you know where I'm going with this. It looks like this, which is, it doesn't look right. It's just, so I think forcing the array both fixes this naming, because as you say, Garth, you don't have to use sequence. You can just use.
Yeah. And I think it's good to get rid of this hack. The arguments are the array.
Yeah.
To just think, okay, you need to wrap it with sequence. And so it's just,
yeah, exactly.
Sequence goes around it. It's really nice syntax-wise, like we don't need an array as argument, but it's a bit of a hack. I don't think.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just pushing the cleanness of using sequence, but there's more options and possibilities having the array there. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And especially, I think the name is important. It's good to have like, hey, we name things. So for helping people to see clearly is better.
Yeah.
Like never think, why is a name inside my sequence? No, it's why is a string? I mean, no, it's a name. It's different.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because you think, yeah, like if the array isn't there, you suddenly think it's an item of the sequence.
Yeah, and then you think, oh, that it's triggering some signal called foo,
yeah.
or
yeah, exactly.
You can start dreaming stuff, and no, it's the name.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, this was a great discussion.
Yeah.
And we should definitely explore this. Definitely. And it's an addition, so that's good. So it's not like it's so like we have had so many ideas now, like pushing for the release, and then there's this idea, oh, we have to do this, and then oh, finally we can release. Oh no, we have this other idea, we have to do it, or we won't be able to actually put it in. So, but at least this idea we can put in without breaking stuff. That's good. And maybe this was a good transition to. I have a little demo. How will this work? Okay, so if I refresh now, what's this? Oh, there we have it. This is, oops. Yeah, there you can see like how the naming works. So in the debugger now, with named sequences or parallel, in this case, we can see when Webpackbin routes like the root route, it gets the user, and when there is actually a user there, it runs this parallel chain, and it's isolated, and you see it's related to setting the user-related data, which is nice. And then there's some other stuff, and a sequence I haven't named. And then you have a sequence inside that, which is like update sandbox. And this sequence has a parallel execution in it, blah, blah, blah. There's another sequence which is related to updating Firebase. So this is definitely, one thing is like the concept of naming these sequences and grouping them like this, so you see how they are composed together. It's super awesome. And then you have the second part of it, which is how does it actually look as a design, and this can probably be improved. But it's like I think it's a huge boost from the current debugger, at least. So it's really cool. And then there are like some stuff like this should probably not be there, maybe. But those aren't like critical stuff. We'd need to iterate on this anyways. So
it would be nice if the nesting was somehow color coded the same like you did with the signal names on the left.
Oh yeah, yeah. That would
so
be
you
possible.
could just follow it more easily with your eye on the left-hand side then.
Yeah, and often when you have a sequence, there was an idea to like now it's taking up some vertical space to rather have like a symbol or something for parallel and sequence, and then you could display the name vertically, for example, and stuff like that. So there's, yeah, definitely room for improvements here.
I think it's very cool. Having named parts of the code like this really helps. I think if we could collapse them, it would be totally super awesome.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Like, you know, close some parts so you can focus on something. But that's just, you know, shininess. Maybe it's not useful, but it looks good.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, it's a good point. And like what I really like about this, like composing things is a really good thing, like in terms of reusability and all this stuff. And we can actually visualize composition. And I don't have like crazy much experience with a lot of different tools, but I never like heard about that concept in coding, like visualizing composition like this. So it's really cool.
Yeah, it looks a bit like literate programming to me. I'm a big fan of this, you know, like there's this project called Programming with Eve.
Mm-hmm.
And it's they've been doing this for years. Like you have text with titles, and then you have code, and the code is active. It's actually how you write the code. But you can collapse like paragraphs or parts of titles of stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's really, really helping when you get into a project, you just read through things, and it's a bit like that. You have the debugger and you can read through what happens. So the next thing will be enhanced titles where you can have text, like, you know, real text. So you document your sequence with a paragraph, mm-hmm. and then you can see it in the debugger, and so you read the signal, and then you say, okay, this is done because of that and that and that. So you're documenting the code, but also the debugging. And so then we really get very close to this literate programming thing, which helps write really good code, actually. Like the first guy to really do it was Knut, who wrote, I think it's when he wrote LaTeX.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole source code of LaTeX is actually written like that, interspaced with math and text and code. But it really helps when you just fix a bug, you read stuff, and you get a lot more context for your brain to properly process what you read as code. So yeah, it's a very good way forward for me. I'm very glad you did that.
Yeah.
There's one other possibility that this could be used for.
Can be
I don't
used
know
for
if you use any of this snapshot testing in Jest, but you could basically do a very similar thing where you could record a signal execution and store that as a system test, and then replay it against your code base just to make sure that things are still working. This would actually be super useful.
Yeah, I saw that. That was actually, that's when you say that, it's ringing like in the back of my head. We had a talk about that, like record some sequence and then it produces the code for you, like the test code, and then you can just run it again and again. And
yeah, this is what I mean. The test helper that I added in for Signal does actually capture the inputs and outputs for each action. I mean, it would just be an extension of that to make a recording and then turn that into a little piece of code that runs automatically, and you can regenerate those tests directly via the debugger.
So you mean both run it and also validate the results?
Well, I mean, you basically create a snapshot of that particular signal execution with its inputs and outputs, and then you store that as a replayable snapshot test, just to make sure that in the future code changes don't break that, or have the option to re-record it automatically. Very similar to the way that Jest is doing with the output of your UI.
So we would just need some kind of JSON representation of what we see in the debugger that we can compare, or like text.
More than that, because you would also actually want to have the execution automated as well. So it's basically like a test helper that will take this JSON, take the signal, and rerun it, and make sure that the comparison is the same.
What's oh, sorry.
No, but with this text, I think it's good if we can like do it in the debugger and you have some raw stuff, and then you trim out the stuff that's not vital for the test. Like I often find myself that I see the big snapshot and it fails, and there's a bunch of unrelated stuff that makes it fail, and I have to spend a lot of time fixing tests for just this stuff that's not related to what I'm testing. And if we can do this, but just remove all the actions that are that we don't want to validate, that are not, like the one thing we want to test, we avoid having, oh, I changed this little thing in the API and then all my snapshots are broken. And then I have to read through all of them because, yeah, this action is now changing the output a little bit. But, it makes the test very brittle. But if we have some kind of JSON, we can edit and say, oh, I just want to validate the second action, the fourth, and the last one. And so that would mean running it and testing and validating it at two different things.
Yeah.
It's like if you do just testing with React stuff today, it breaks all the time because you just change one property in like a parent thing, and then everything looks different. And either you're patient enough to read through the test and see if it's all broken because of something really wrong or just this little detail, but usually you just say, oh, take the new snapshot, and the test is testing nothing. It's just, maybe it's broken, but you don't know.
Yeah, but when I do this snapshot testing, I always combine it with something. You know, if I'm expecting 10 elements to be output in the UI, I will always count there's 10 elements as well as doing the snapshot. You know, you combine, but it means that you don't necessarily have to go through every single piece of the DOM to actually figure out what its content is. You know, you can visually inspect, but then you can combine that with some kind of extra checks just in case. And if we could do something similar to that, it gives you the option to put in some manual checks, and as well as kind of a snapshot of the signal and a helper for running it. I think that would be, well, anyway, I can imagine that would be useful.
Also, the fact that, like, what it could do is, like, whenever an asynchronous action is run, it wouldn't, like, we could make it only run mutations. So when you recorded some result from an asynchronous action, when you replay it, it would just create the output for it. So it would just ignore running it, kind of. But every kind of mutation that was recorded will actually run to see if it does the same thing. Because that's also a thing, like you record a bunch of side effects as well, and you don't want to rerun those side effects, like talking to the server and stuff, I suppose.
Maybe you'd have to mark certain actions as being deterministic or not. And if it's non-deterministic, then you can't include that in your test then.
Yeah, like a rough version of that would just be, okay, is it async and has an output, stored output, ignore it on the...
No, but you can't but now that we allow people to write state during an async operation, then you can't do that anymore.
I had a little itch when I allowed that, because that's what was like the beautiful thing in Cerebral 1, having that clear separation, because the way it actually stored the signal execution, not only the mutation, like it does now. So it had to be that way, but now it doesn't have to be that way, but maybe it was a good idea that it actually was that way, because it gives some restrictions to, like what we're talking about now.
I think it wasn't a problem that was a restriction. You know, I think it was quite clear that you just output your state that you want to store, and you do it in the next action. You know, do your set.
Yeah, I
think that was fine.
Yeah, because it's restrictions that opens up new possibilities. Really, like for example, Redux with its reducer thingy, it's kind of like a constraint. Like it's so simple and so low level, but it opens up lots of possibilities. Like immutability as well. It can be looked at as a restriction, but it opens up new possibilities. So restraints are often a good thing. Definitely. Cool. But yeah.
Maybe we should just take a note that there's a potential for testing regarding the debugger, and just explore this idea. I think the idea is really good. And so maybe...
like with the standalone debugger, you could actually just click a signal, and you can click a button, create test, and it has access to the file system. So you could actually, where do you want this test to be stored, and spit it out. That would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, and then we can, if we can edit it, for me it's very important that tests are edited. Like you can focus on what you want to test, not everything in the action. Like, you know, like you say, something is like random, like the user ID, or I don't know, the time of the day. It can be anything. Yeah, maybe your app, you know, uses time and outputs something that is now, like the time tracker does. So how do you do this testing? So yeah, but that's an idea we should just let live for post 2.0, I think.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Yeah, just a comment there. Yeah, the standalone debugger is an Electron app, so that can work on the file system. I'm very positive that the Chrome extension cannot do it, or maybe it can. Well, there are probably extensions where you can save
I don't know, but the default debugger does communicate with the file system because you can, edit files directly and stuff if you map a workspace directory or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
So maybe they provide that to the extensions as well, but I don't know.
Yeah. But it would definitely be awesome to do something like that. But like I looked at your app earlier today, Gaspar, like with your drag and drop of these different blocks and stuff, and we talked about having like a signal composition tool where you would just, okay, you have all your operators and your custom factories and all this stuff, and they are just Lego blocks, and you just drag and drop and put them into a sequence. Like, it would be insanely cool. But yeah, so maybe we can, can't you make a small library out of just this putting stuff together? And then we can go from there.
Actually, the code blocks that are put together, it is a tree. So it's kind of funny because, yeah, each parent block has access to the branches below.
Yeah.
So it's very similar to function tree. The idea behind these blocks comes from function tree, actually. When you started working on this, I thought, hey, because it's a compiler, this thing. Each block runs, the code goes, there's a code flow through these blocks. So it's very easy to just say, now the code running through them generates a signal, or a script, because I'm using this to generate Lua code. You assemble JavaScript blocks, but when they run, they create Lua code that is running to another process. So it's already running. So it's something that's possible. It's also going to be very useful for, when you do this big math library stuff to do machine learning. Yeah. Then you assemble blocks. So just using the same thing to assemble Cerebral code could be pretty easy, I think.
Yeah, I really like the fact when you attach something new, the width changes. So it just looks really good.
Yeah, this thing is actually a problem to scale up. The fact that it opens, because it becomes so big very fast that you cannot view it anymore. So now I'm rewriting it to do literate programming, where the branching is actually event-based. So it can be like on load, it branches things together. But you can also do, like, when you press this key on the keyboard, it's going to branch this new function into the tree. Because, like, in Cerebral, you have one signal for event, but in this thing, there's just one rendered tree. That's always the same tree that's running. And if you want to, like, blur the image, you have to attach new code and then detach it. And if you have all the possible cases there, it makes a huge tree and it's not manageable. Yeah. So yeah, now the idea is more to have small bits of trees that are branched together on request, basically, like it's pattern based. Yeah, it's less cute, but it makes something very, very powerful. You have just little bits that you plug together, but each block is readable on its own. Yeah, because I tried to make big projects with these things and it breaks very fast.
Okay, yeah.
Because it gets too wide. That's just the biggest issue. It's just too wide.
Stupid. And that's like the story of my life building apps. It's when you scale, it breaks. It's just.
Yeah, but then you have to find powerful abstractions that make it robust to scaling. Yeah. And when you find them, it's just incredible where you can go with that.
Yeah,
really, I think it's worth the effort, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet. I didn't have any more notes actually. So at least to summarize two things, I'll create an issue or a comment at least on the pull request for the new forms, just to suggest this change of, okay, should we rather think of this as like validation of the of the state tree rather than specifically for forms. So I'll create an issue there so we can conclude by putting some reactions on the comment or something. And also, before we do this merge of the sequence parallel stuff, I'll force it to use an array there. So we have the make a rebase or a commit or something on that. So yeah, it scales better. We get new possibilities. Sweet. Does anyone have anything they want to show or talk about or share with the group?
Apart that we are eager to have 2.0 officially out.
Yeah.
So that we can impress people and friends. It would be cool. No, I really want to go to this React Zurich thing, and there's like what you did with Webpackbin is so cool, because then everyone will be able to code around during the presentation, or we'll do some playing stuff thing.
Yeah.
So it's really moving in the right direction. But we're like kids waiting for Christmas, so.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. I'm kind of excited about like the feedback on it. Now it's more of a, this is what it's supposed to be. Like it just needed more iterations. So yeah, it will be exciting.
I started using the new form stuff already, actually.
Oh. Did you solve? You had this suggestion on nesting, like you had your own form compute, putting it into the other form compute. Did it work?
Yeah, I mean, on our project, we had loads of problems with the previous forms implementation. Not problems, but a lot of code around keeping the form definition in sync with the data, because the data, the number of fields and arrays were constantly changing, and you didn't know what they were necessarily at the time that the form loaded. The data might come later if it was loaded asynchronously, and there's no way to kind of trigger and execute based on data changes, which was one thing we were talking about a while ago. So I think this being able to do it by passing in a compute into the form basically solves all of those problems.
Sweet. That's awesome. Cool. But yeah, I just want to finish off saying thanks for Alexis having a presentation on Cerebral, and it was so cool to see everyone uploading images of their apps and like the signals from the debugger. It was just an awesome insight. So thanks for that.
Yeah,
cool.
I posted a message on Discord that I think it would be really cool to have some place where we have the names of the people and what they're working on, and especially the technologies they're using really with Cerebral, so that you can say, hey, I'm not sure this works well, but then you see, oh, in this project they've been using it for a long time, so okay, it should go well, and you have the name of the person. You can contact this person, maybe like pay the person to help you out get started. And I think this could really be helpful, because when you get into new technologies, you have so many options, and you're like, which one should I use? This, that. And if you see who's using what in a small community like Cerebral, could really help. Like you see, these people are a bit like-minded. They like the same tools you do, so probably they've been choosing things with the same kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, I've been doing some matchmaking, like manual matchmaking. Like someone asks a question like GraphQL. Oh, go talk to Wayne. He's been working on that, and it would be nice to have, some more automatic matchmaking.
It could be just a page of what we have now on GitHub with Alexei. It's just something that is. Yeah, everyone has some little paragraph on, hey, I'm this company. I like working with, I don't know, Firebase, MySQL, CouchDB, I don't know. And these are my projects. And maybe if you have a screenshot, it could be really, really good for, selling Cerebral. Look at all these projects and all the technologies involved. And also it could be helpful when you work, like, I'm stuck with this Firebase stuff. Julio knows that, so I ask him.
Yeah, maybe we could have just like we could have a page on the website and just have a format for like what's your name and what do you like, what packages or what technology do you work on, and then people can just edit it themselves, and then there's at least one place you can go to see what people are working on.
If people are okay with having things public, it could be on the website.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's more up to the person, like, okay, I want to be contacted by other people, it's okay. So it's at least manageable, and it's probably a good like first iteration of the idea. Because it's that's like the really fun part. It's like talking to people and share what you've been doing, and
yes, because I'm actually taking notes. I see people's projects and I take notes. Oh, he does this, he knows to do this, and so I'm doing it manually now. But if we have it together in some place, it would be nice.
I'll write that down as well. Create page.
Because very often we don't really know what people are using. I mean, we have seen some screenshot of an app, but like he's working a lot with C# in his app. Why? How? Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's a really good idea. Cool. I think I need to heat up my frozen pizza and open another beer.
And start your game.
And get into my gaming.
Yeah.
This like thing is like, I think I'll be here like half an hour by myself, and then I start missing them. Sweet.
Yeah, I'll have 1 week without the little baby.
Oh, yeah.
They're going 1 week like on vacation, and I'm staying home.
Okay.
It's gonna be terrible.
Yeah.
I'm not happy at all.
Yeah. Like you're super tired and exhausted when they're there, and then when they're gone, you're like super sad because they're gone. So never get to the perfect
and super
balance.
Bored.
Yeah. But this was an awesome hangout. Thanks for all the great discussions.
Yeah, thanks.
So yeah, I'll just do the 2 points I said, and then we'll have another hangout soon. And we still have the router that needs to
be great again.
Be great again. Yeah. So I know Alexia has had a lot of stuff to do at work. So but people have been using it, and we have been using it in our project. So it's really getting there. Cool. Thanks. Have a good night, and talk to you later.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Nice pizza.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.